Hey, welcome to Breaking the News Plus. I'm Jana Shortle. So the big news is out of Minneapolis, but it affects everybody in the state because everybody is in Minneapolis for different events. Brian O'Hara, the chief of police that was well liked by many people in the community, abruptly resigns yesterday, and we find out kind of late last night. And so today we're picking up the pieces, and there are a lot to pick up. Lauren Leamanczyk from our I-Team is with us today because Lauren's task was talking to the Minneapolis City Council. No small task, because that's a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions. How are they taking the news of the O'Hara resignation?
So they were as shocked as the rest of us were, to a person. I don't know anyone who saw this coming before the news broke last night. Even the council president, Elliot Payne, said just before Mayor Fry made that public, he got a call from Mayor Fry. So it wasn't like they were in the know on this.
Okay.
They had heard the rumors, as we had in the newsroom too, that there were
sexual
misconduct allegations against Mayor Fry. Those were
against
found to
Brian
be,
O'Hara.
or, I'm sorry, yes, against Brian O'Hara. Misspoke. Those, as you know now, were found to be unsubstantiated last summer. To a person, they say what they did not know about was this new investigation into the allegations that Chief O'Hara deleted a contact from his phone and spoke to people about the investigation that he wasn't supposed to. Okay. So they didn't know that. And there's frustration about that they weren't told that they didn't know. Among the progressive members of the city council who were not fans of Brian O'Hara to begin with, they held a news conference today, Jason Chavez, Payne, and then also Robin Wansley held a news conference to talk about this, and they're putting this at Mayor Fry's feet because they're incredibly angry that he would put Chief O'Hara up for a renomination knowing about this investigation that was underway, the second investigation.
Okay. Yeah, so the second investigation, and this is something that I don't think can be explained enough, and in as much of layman's terms as we can. The second investigation, again, comes after they find no reprimand for sexual misconduct.
Yeah, it was unsubstantiated. They couldn't prove it. They don't know what happened.
So can't prove that he had intimate relationships with other city employees. So that's done. But the second investigation has to do with, and it seems kind of smaller potatoes to the average person, that during that first investigation, the chief of police deleted a contact in his phone that was related to the investigation, and that he talked to other people about that investigation when he was told to button up. Those are what was found that he did wrong.
Yes.
And that's what the council didn't know about, that there was this investigation, number two, into the chief's conduct during the investigation.
That's right.
Okay.
And that's where there's some frustration that they said before Mayor Fry nominated O'Hara to this second term, they should have been told about this, what that investigation was all about. And what they did know is, because it's a public dashboard, that there were 30-plus complaints out there against Chief O'Hara. But they didn't know the content of those complaints because in Minneapolis, until a complaint is substantiated, you don't get to know the contents of that complaint. And so, and Payne today, again, a critic of O'Hara, said, listen, we didn't know if those were people calling in because they were upset about how he handled Operation Metro Surge, or because they bumped into him on the street and they didn't like his behavior, or if it was something serious. They had no idea what those were about. Those were going to loom large in his confirmation hearings.
Those complaints.
The city council was going to have to vote on Chief O'Hara's reconfirmation to the role.
And the mayor had said just today, just a couple of hours ago, he actually said that he first got the results of this second investigation yesterday morning, made the decision, talked to O'Hara, makes it public last night. This all happens in one very long business day.
Yes.
So let's talk specific about the council, because you've brought up a couple of times that Elliot Payne, the council president, has not been a big fan of Chief O'Hara, and that is centered around overtime costs during Operation Metro Surge was mentioned. These complaints that they don't know, what's at the bottom of those, the handling of certain cases like Davis Maturi, Allison Lucier. There's a lot of things there that the council wanted to ask about. Was this council going to give him the green light anyway? Did you get the chance to ask them that? Would we have lost Brian O'Hara as the chief in August or September anyway?
Well, that's the big question, right? And I asked that at the news conference, the final question as they were wrapping up, and Payne said that's not relevant anymore. So he didn't answer the question. I have talked on background with other members of the council who say this was going to be a real close vote. Some think that he might have been confirmed. And, you know, and that was up in the air. And a lot of members, including Michael Rainville, who had been a staunch supporter of the chief and a Fry ally, had said he was waiting to find out more about the rumors that he had heard, the investigations, but he was a yes. And that was the same thing I spoke with Jamison Whiting as well. They were yeses on O'Hara. Not surprising. They're part of the, if you will, the moderate wing that was more on board with O'Hara. But they did want to hear the result of some of these investigations. And they said their minds could have been changed by the results, and now, of course, they are. I haven't talked to a member of the city council today, and I haven't talked to all of them, but I haven't talked to a member who feels like it is wrong that O'Hara resigned, given the results of this new investigation into him, which you're right, may seem kind of like small potatoes to the average citizen. So he deleted a contact out of his phone, or he talked to someone he wasn't supposed to. But how everyone's describing this is a breach of trust.
Right.
He's the police chief, and integrity and honoring the results and the process of an investigation sort of central to the job.
Right. That's exactly what Mayor Fry has said. Basically, trust was breached, and that is not just part of the job of the police chief. That is the job of the police chief. So it is at a higher stakes, no matter how painful for some in community that thought, Buddy did a good job as police chief. The trust was getting better. Crime has gone down. We have gotten more officers. We're swelling the ranks again, and we're more diverse than we've ever been as a department. They look at all of that, some people, and they're like, ugh, we're getting lost in the weeds here.
Right. Right. And talking to Michael Rainville and his statements around this, talking to Whiting, seeing the statements of Jamal Osman. Yeah, they were happy with the job that O'Hara was doing, by and large. So I think that there is disappointment even among some council members. They don't have the opportunity to vote to reappoint him.
Yeah, and I think that was echoed yet again from Mayor Jacob Fry's statement to us in an interview. He said, Lauren, that this is among the most painful decisions he's ever had to make. And probably because you're looking at a resume and a proof of performance. But then you're looking at perhaps he did the one thing he never should have done, which is tamper with an investigation. And that's what I think people have to understand, agree with it or not. It doesn't matter how you feel. Well, I shouldn't say that. It does matter. But when you tamper with an investigation as like kind of the head of investigations for the biggest city in the state, that opens the possibility that it could happen again. Is that the kind of...
You know, and I didn't speak with anyone directly about that, but it is the reason we have Brady lists, right? Police officers are held to this high standard.
Okay.
They can't lie. And if they do lie, it can be used against them in court. We hold our public officers to this high standard when it comes to integrity, when it comes to honesty, and when it comes to honoring an investigation. And so this is speculation, but based on what Mayor Fry has said, this is, as you mentioned, the thing you can't do.
Right. It's kind of like the military code of conduct, honor, like it's at a different plane.
Right. But I think among people I talked to, there certainly is disappointment because, as you mentioned, crime was down, the police recruiting was up. There are people who are probably more plugged into MPD than I am that could speak to morale, but by many accounts, morale was starting to come back after reaching sort of an all-time low.
Right.
2020, 2021, when officers were leaving the force in droves.
Right.
So O'Hara took over at a time, and many council members have been thanking him for this, a time of transformation, a time of really crisis for the department. And many have mentioned that they felt like it was stabilizing. Now, of course, the flip side, those who held the news conference today did not feel like he was doing a good job. They didn't feel like he was moving fast enough to implement the consent decree orders. They wanted more transparency around cases like Allison Lucier and Davis Moturi. And, and obviously frustrations around police overtime and the handling of Operation Metro Surge and other issues.
Yeah, and this one doesn't feel like it has a definitive I certainly don't see like a celebratory reaction. And perhaps you did. Did it feel like these council members that didn't want him to be the chief, were they celebratory in this, or they're just like, he did do a good job, but there were things that mean he should have moved on?
I would say neither. There was no, the council members who held the news conference today, they were definitely not celebratory around it. They weren't like, yay, O'Hara's gone. They held their fire for Mayor Fry.
Okay.
They're putting this blame at the feet of Mayor Fry. They say this is just an example of how he has not controlled MPD, how he has let it run amok, how he and Todd Barnett did not keep a handle on what was happening with the Minneapolis police. And so they blame Fry essentially for all of this. And what they're calling for now, looking forward, is to be involved from the beginning with the search for a new chief. And what they're asking for is collaboration.
Which gets back to kind of that central issue that you and I as journalists have faced for years and years when it comes to covering Minneapolis, is just this I don't even know if fractured is a strong enough term to describe the relationship between the mayor and some members of council. And if that isn't bridged, we find ourselves as residents, I'm a resident of the city of Minneapolis, in this crisis mode where we're going to lose people because they can't govern together.
And there was definitely a shot across the bow today. I haven't had a chance to read it. I should open up my phone. Just before I came out to talk to you, Mayor Fry sent a response to that news conference. That
give it to me, girl.
Yeah, let's pull it open. Response, hot tea right here. Following the press conference, Mayor Fry in our office, here was the statement. I don't make decisions based on rumors and anonymous complaints, because that would mean making decisions based on optics, not facts. I took action promptly after receiving the investigative report with substantiated findings. That's accountability. But decisions this serious have to be grounded in facts, evidence, and completed investigation. Anything less would be irresponsible.
But does it say anything about their criticism that they weren't informed of the investigation while still having to consider him for renomination?
It does not. I think what he's responding to is their contention that because he knew about this, he shouldn't have put him up for renomination to begin with.
Right. All right. Well, this chapter will not end because we'll go through finding a new police chief in the city of Minneapolis. Lauren, thanks for covering the city council on this issue today and for being on btn-plus.
All right, nice talking to you.
That's all for us tonight. We'll see you next time. I'm Jana Shortle.